Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here and glad you all came out, and it's good. Um, yeah, feel free as we go along to ask me questions, and then so I was so I sort of graduated from university in 75, and then I went on a tour, across the country in a Bell telephone van, and then I came back and I heard my friend Jamie Cook was back from going to the Alan Mackey School of Log Building up in Prince George in the early 70s. He got in on the first courses, and Alan Mackey was the grandfather of log building in Canada. He got the first school going for the resurgence of log building. And Jamie had lived with me while I was in college for a month or so, and I got to know him quite well, and I knew him in high school as well. So I gave him a ring, went up to see him, and the next thing you know, I was working on this building here, which was the predecessor to the first Canadian Canoe Museum in Peterborough. This was up in Minden. So I went from being in the city, and I had always wanted to live in the country ever since I was a kid. I did well in school, but I didn't like all the sitting. And I didn't like being inside all the time. The sitting drove me nuts. And so I always wanted to live in the country. And so I just went up to Minden and started. And the next thing I know, I was standing out in the forest, cutting trees down, hand-hewing beams, and making joinery. And we were working on this building when that building ended. So that was September 15th, 1975 I started. I was just turned 23. And then I went back with Jamie, and we did a few log buildings in Sharbert Lake. And then so I worked with him for about 2 years, and he even got a few courses going, and he had me teach the courses. So then then he sort of got sick. He had a divorce and did one thing after the other. So the clients turned to me. So at 25, I was taking my own contracts on, and from then on in, it's been one client after the other. I'm 73 now, and I'm still going. I got 4 projects on the go now, and I don't get much time to sit other than the evening. So it's sort of I got what I wished for. So anyway, this was the first project. Here's a fellow that was working on my first log building that I did by myself. Here's Jamie and I doing a timber frame building in the log. So we working with cranes. I got a lot of pictures, so I'm just gonna give you a big overview. And this is the one I did in Brudenell for Richard Gullen, who ran Sierra Designs up in Foymount and all that. And we did. I forget when I did that, but that would have been after I moved to Combermere in 79. I was living down in Sharbert Lake in Perth area, but I wanted to get further. When I was 19, I had lived at Madonna House for a winter, and so I was there, and I got to know all the Polish people around Wilno, Combermere, and it just reminded me of being back where my people come from, is in rural Prince Edward Island. They came there in the 1700s, and we still got part of the original farm. And so I kind of, it reminded me of that. So I felt really natural in Combermere. And so then, and I was, next thing you know, I went up there, started getting projects one after another. And and it was all just, sometimes it was lean, sometimes it was fat, you know what I mean? But I got to know all the Sawyers in the Combermere, Palmer Rapids, Quadville area. And they all became my friends, and I would, and so I had access to lots of timber. And I took when I was in university, I just did a liberal arts. So a lot of Shakespeare, a lot of Dostoevsky, a lot of Chinese Buddhism and Japanese Buddhism, and on and on and on. All just those Irish literature, et cetera, et cetera. But it wasn't going to give me a job, or at least a job that I wanted. So anyway, so timber framing, a week into this timber framing, I said, nobody's doing this, and I'm going to stick with it. So from then on in, I was focused. And so there wasn't many books around. Nobody knew what timber framing was, the word. I always had to have an explanation, and I hadn't really developed, at the beginning, I hadn't really had much prop projects, but we still managed, and we were mostly working with logs and squaring them up and hand hewing them and this and that. But then I did 10 years of 80% log building and 20% timber framing. But by the time I was in my late 20s, I thought, no more log building for me. I didn't, it was just, I didn't think it was a good trade to have as I aged. And I took a few falls, and I just thought, and I started, and I had a couple kids by then, and I thought, so I was really focusing on timber framing. So I went to Maine, and I worked with the guy, Steve Chappell. He wrote one of the books over there, and he offered me a job, but I didn't want to live in the States. So I stayed, and the next thing you know, I got a guy in Barry's Bay. We did a project, and I did a few, and I showed my pictures to my brother-in-law, and he was in Banff. So the next thing you know, in the 87, 80, so I started shipping timber frames from Combermere to Canmore and Banff. So here's one, and as soon as I got out there, started doing projects, next thing you know, they're flying me up on top of mountains, building gazebos, and so that was I would sort of build it down in the valley, and then we'd fly it up, and I would do the foundation and everything like that. So I got in with this company out west, and I started building on the Bow River and all that, and it was. And in the meantime, I hooked up with the Timber Framers Guild of North America. That started in '86. And so I was starting to go to conferences, and I met all the guys in the States and all the Canadian timber framers, and one thing leads to the other, and so then I got involved with the covered bridge in Guelph that we put up. I forget exactly the year. It was in the late 80s or early 90s. And this is just a picture of, I didn't have many, I didn't really have a camera back then, so I just buy those little, those little simple cameras that you throw away. But anyway, so I don't have. Anyway, this is putting up. Let's see. We'll go on to the next one. Okay, yeah, there's the bridge there, and so it's 120. It was 120 feet long. It's called a town lattice truss. But I got to know the engineers, and I got to know Jan Lewinsky, who was a timber bridge specialist and all that. So that was all exciting, and so I got in with all the top timber framers in the United States, and played music with a lot of them. I started music when I was 17. Just no lessons, just a book, Gordon Lightfoot songs with chords, but I started going to the folk clubs in Toronto when I was in grade 10. And I was going to the Riverboat in Yorkville and Fiddler's Green, a really good British Isles kind of Scottish Irish. And so, and then all the Americans were coming up, and so then that got me into playing guitar and my style that you'll see later. So music has been always part of it, but it's always been casual, no studying, just playing. Emphasis on play and having fun. So I'm just going to run through these are the kind of drawings that we're able to produce now. At first I was doing everything by hand, and I still do a lot of hand drawings for simple buildings. So some of these, this would be my drawing. This would be just a concept drawing of that I didn't do. I forget the guy who. Anyway, but a local guy in the valley. When I say local, I mean within 3 hours. Just a picture of some of the joinery I do. It's all, it's just so I'm working with white pine, 100%. No red pine. Red pine twists too much, it bleeds too much sap, it stains badly. So you want something stable. White pine is a lot of white pine around here, big sizes, and it's the least shrinkage of most woods, or of all woods, they say. So this is a braze, a ridge, than previous, just a post. Way we sort of connect to the floor, especially if it's on concrete. There's sort of one of my drawings I was supplying someone a bunch of trusses. So you just work this out. And then, so at the beginning, I just sort of had to talk the building inspector into it. And then as it got more and more, then we had to get things engineered. So I hooked up with a good engineer down in Arnprior. And he sort of, I just sent him my pictures and my drawings, and then he would make notes, and then he'd either stamp it or we'd make changes, and then he'd stamp it. So it worked out good. And these are just this. So this is the basic concept. I'll use here. There we go. So this would be the timber frame here, and then we wrap it in what we call structural insulated panels. They're basically foam panels bonded together with chipboard or OSB, oriented strand board, and then they came in 4 feet wide by up to, the biggest panels I've used were 8 feet wide and 20 feet long. So these panels kind of revolutionized how you would close in a timber frame building. And so we started using those. That's not the only way people close them in, but I've got a chunk of panel over there. And let's just see here. We'll go. Yeah, just another view, just a different view. In timber framing, one of the things we don't do a lot of is run the timbers through the envelope. So, oops, daisy, I'm getting excited here. There we go. There we go, right here. So, so that we're able to really make a good blanket around the building and not have any timbers going through the envelope, so that it, because the timbers will shrink and they'll check and they'll bring air from the inside, and then you'll get condensation at the dew point between the inside and the outside, and that leads to mold and stuff like that. So sealing it all with panels has been sort of a fundamental thing that was developed by. So we'll go on to the next, see where we're at. Just another drawing. Here's a drawing. So basically my whole focus has been keep it simple, and so I've always I've worked in with 2 or 3, or like right now I'm working mostly by myself with a little help here and there when I raise and things like that, because I did have a crew various times, but it just got too much. I was ready to slit my throat after 5 years, so I just I said, that's not me. So I like to work in I have a few guys that I work with as associates, so there's no paperwork. We just share the project, and we don't get too complicated on that sort of style. So this is my shop. This is one part of my shop, and I'm working on I did a project a few years ago. I've done a lot of work on Georgian Bay, on the islands in Georgian Bay and on the mainland. And this is a big 32 by 32 living room, kitchen, and it's a dining room. And so it's 32 by 32 clear span. There's no posts in the middle. So I had to get big Douglas fir timbers and it was a hip roof. I had to buy these 32-foot, or I'm not sure how, they're over 30 feet, the hips. And Douglas fir timber from, there's a place down in Barrie that brings in Douglas fir, but 4 timbers cost us $7,000. I was pretty impressed with that compared to what. See, the one thing when I was shipping out west, just while we're on the cost, I was able to ship with white pine here and ship a tractor trailer of timbers, or a building, a whole cut building, which I would cut down in Combermere. And I was getting the wood and then flying out there and flying back, and paying for the trucking, and that was all. White pine was that much cheaper than buying Douglas fir out in the west. And white pine is way more stable than Douglas fir. Douglas fir is stronger, but its ability to twist is quite large, and anyway, you struggle with it the whole time. Anyway, but when I was out west, I worked with mostly Douglas fir, which is kind of a salmon color, and then I also worked with mountain larch. And mountain larch is like it's a little bit softer version of our tamarack. It's more like Douglas fir, but it's more of a coffee color. I don't know if I got any pictures of that in here. So I'm making a little pocket here for a rafter. So this whole thing is, there's it's all about layout. So I'm fitting a beam there. That's sort of a sample rafter top. So I'm fitting it in there, and then here I'm sort of, this is the approach that I use to cut it out. And everything I do is I knife every line, and you heard me measure twice. Well, I measure 4 or 5 times, and then I go away because I don't want to make any mistakes. So it's all about going slow, and so I don't rush anything. It's opposite of regular construction where they're sort of go and yelling if you're. When I get people to work with me, it's all about calming down and being in the moment and the focus and being there. So I like a nice quiet shop with, music that sort of suits me. It's not irritating and stuff like that. And so it's sort of kind of pleasant. Oh, wrong way. There I am there. So sometimes I test fit inside the shop. So here I'm putting in I only got 1 post in the middle of my shop. This is about the smallest shop I can get away with. It's 24 by 40, and but it's still wood. It's easy enough to heat. I just heat with all my scrap, so I don't really have any heating costs, and it's more cleaning is what it's doing. It helps me get rid of the waste, and then I can heat my house with that too. So there's a bonus. So all my tools are there, and et cetera, et cetera. Now, at the beginning when I started, everything was a hand drill, because it's all based on the mortise and tenon. Mortise, and the hole is the mortise, and the tenon is the tongue that goes in. And so at the beginning, everything was drilling and then using a chisel, and that really added a lot of labor, and it was hard on your shoulders and stuff like that. But then they developed. Then I was able to get. And it became more, and I didn't know anyone with a chain mortiser, but now that's a standard tool now. I have 2 of them, and this is it here. Maybe I got a closer, just a bunch of timbers there. I'll get to the chain mortiser once it shows up. And then, so this is what I use, this tool here. This is a 12-inch electric planer, handheld. It just surfaces the thing. So I can take a rough sawn piece and dress it with this and then sand it, And so that gives you a nice finish. And it's a liberation. And so between that and my chain mortiser, eventually. Oh, and this is how I move timber. So I don't have a tractor or anything like that, nothing to break. I paid $125 for that. Got a Mike Poplinski. He sort of made it for us. Me and Steve McLaughlin, when I was building a house with Steve for him. And so it's just all about the balance point, and you just get it on and I keep all my sawhorses. I only work on a horizontal plane. I don't put anything low or anything high. I just work right at sawhorse level, so everything's in my power zone. So I can move all these timbers with this cart, and it just got car tires and an axle and et cetera, a little frame. And so I just get it in on the balance point. The cart takes all the load, and my yard just has a slight a slight slope to it, so it's easy to get timbers in the shop. And then when I take them out, I've already reduced a lot of the weight because you only can buy timbers in 2-foot increments, so there's always waste on a little bit of waste on the timbers. And then I also use rollers if I have, so I bought when I was young, I bought a 12-foot piece of conveyor belt, with the rollers everywhere, and I just cut it all up and bolted it on, and then it can fit on my sawhorses right between in there. That they just click over my sawhorses, so I can move timbers like that. Here's just so here's us out in the yard. So most of my timbers I get sourced locally, and I have a friend, Mark Cernosky, who's also a sawyer. He grew up in the Kilkaloo-Wilno area on a 800-acre farm. He's Polish. His family's been there for a long time, and he's working for this fellow here, William Hawkins, and William's a farmer kind of between Pembroke and Rankin there, and he's inherited, his family has been doing it, and he's got about 6 farms that he's able to take timber off of, so he's given me lots of my timber, and they just everything's done with small trailers, and it's easy, slide the timbers off, and just yeah. So here I'm just test fitting a brace into a brace pocket, and then this is what it's looking like when I get all the notches in, getting started. And I got enough room for my kayak up top to hang in the wintertime, and the shop looks narrower there than it actually is, and there's my, I got clients there who have passed away, and family, just to keep me, that was my office. And then just down there, and it's just some more. And then I was also buying from a guy in Alice for about 12 years. I bought from him, and a guy named Jamie Rogie, and his father Harvey who was in his late 70s, and he was still driving a log truck, so he used to deliver all my timbers for me and just set them out on all my sawhorses. So again, there's no extra lifting for me. And then I got Bernie Charbonneau. He had a little sawmill, and if I needed to resaw anything like that, he'd come down and saw it. So I'm just using the local guys, who's ever got the skills, and it's been good. So here's my chain mortisers, and I've got 2, and basically what it is, it's a chainsaw. Like, instead of having one chain, like a chainsaw, it's got I think it's got 3. Every drive length has a cutting tooth on it, so there's like way more than a chainsaw. And it plunges like a plunge router, and so that cuts all my mortises. So that sort of has solved the half hour it took to make a mortise. So now I can cut a mortise in less than a minute or a minute and a half, and and there's no wear and tear on the body. So that's what's able. So between the chain mortiser and the cart, they've really these are things that have enabled me to stay in the game and not wear my body out. I use end sealer on all the end cuts, all the cuts, and that slows the moisture down, because the most, what I'm protecting is the sun is the hardest thing in the summertime. Dries everything out fast, and you get cracking around the joints and stuff. So I use end sealer there, and traditionally I used a lot of oil, you know, because everyone wanted an oil finish. And so I would finish in the shop as well, but I'm not doing it as much anymore because it gets dirty while you move it and raise the building, and then if they go to sand it, then it gums up the sander. So I just do it dry now, and then at the painting stage, it's all dressed and everything, but we're going to sand the whole frame with the painter, sand the whole frame, and then what that does is open the pores, and then the stain or the oil all goes in at the same level, so you don't get splotchy bits. That's a little bit on it. I do all my own sharpening, and I'm using sharpening sandpaper on glass, tempered glass, and then I'm using diamond hones, and I've also got a wheel if something chips or anything like that. I just buy everything from the sharpening paper and everything from Lee Valley Tools, and that's good. So then, let's see, back here. I don't know if going the wrong way, I guess. This is my second 12-inch planer. This is the German one. Now, because I did log building for 10 years, I got to be pretty good with the chainsaw, but now I'm inside, so I just use electric chainsaws inside the house and gas outside. And I do a lot with the chainsaw. I can pretty much cut to a scribe line, and then I just use a little bit of a sander or chisel or grind it off. So that I've gone through, but I've gone through a lot of chainsaws in my life. And this is my yard. You know, I've got a little bit of a yard here, and I've just got what I need. I don't have, I only can pretty much do one project at a time, which is an advantage, just on the mind, But I've got enough room in there. Yeah, this is my new Swiss Pro, and that it cuts across the grain, and it's got a fence on it, and it's something I like. And this is when it was neat.
Sorry, you said we can ask questions.
Yeah, anytime, yeah.
Do you have to clamp that chainsaw thing down?
No, because it pulls it into the fence. It cuts, so all I do is, it has a fence. Here it is here. And I forgot to bring the fence, in the heat of the moment. And so on this bar here, I've got a fence that locks on, and I can adjust this wherever I want it. And then I take a bite, move it over, take another bite, move it over, etc., etc. And so I bought this for about $3,000, and I think now they're $7,000. So that's kind of scary, but hopefully I don't have to buy another one. Luckily I got two. So, here, I don't want to knock anything over. Let's see and pretty soon we'll go to, so anyway, this is all, going backwards. Yeah, just more shop pictures, test fitting and some complicated stuff. And there's me standing beside a big beam. I like to work the sawdust, the cart.
Is that a white pine beam?
Yeah, white pine beams, yeah. They'll cut big stuff, you know. Sometimes I get big material, like I think I did this project on the island. In the newspaper, they had when they were advertising this, they had a picture of me playing my banjo on the roof, you know, in the newspaper there. Well, that I was sitting on the king post that everything came into, and that was a 16 by 16 piece that went down, and it was about 8 feet, and I was able to make the king post out of that and deal with all the joinery and like a lot of times the engineers help me figure out the sizes, but I've done it for so long now, and I've done so many, it's just been constant. I've been pretty much steady the whole way, and so I've done a lot of projects, so I know what the engineers want, so they generally don't ask me to change it, you know. And I'm doing, and all through the Timber Framers Guild, they've all engineered all the joinery, so I use I use standard joinery. It's based on giving everything an 1.5-inch housing, an 1.5-inch shoulder to sit on, and then a 2-inch tenon, sort of somewhere in the beam, not on the edge, but, you know, so I do offset tenons and all that. Okay, let's just see if we're going that way. So here's some of my, it's a little bit fuzzy. So you know, it's everything's finished. All the cuts, all the joints are finished with a chisel, so that I give a knife. I use just one of those Olfa knives or something like this, and I scribe every joint with one of these knives. These heavier, they're a little heavier than the light ones, and then I use an old, I cut, when my squares get a little worn out, then I just cut them, so I've got straight edges and I like these straight edges because you don't slide, like a thin little stainless steel ruler, it's a very good chance you're going to cut yourself because it's going to slide on top. So these are a little thicker and they're great. And the other thing is they're light. And that's always good. And so we'll just keep going until... So here's Luke Magnan from town here. And he worked for me for 1.5 years. He was sort of just getting started, and we did a big project on Georgian Bay with 11 big bents. You'll see it here in a bit. And but he sort of found himself on this project when he started working with me. He was kind of running all over the place, and then he once he got onto this, he just sort of was like it was like our old dog when he found a deer leg, the bottom half of a deer leg. He wouldn't let it go, you know. Luke was sort of like that too. He just sort of focused, and he was sort of of all the young people that worked with me, there was sort of, he stood out, and he just excelled. And anyway, I couldn't give him enough work or enough money because he was kind of ambitious in both of those departments. And so he phoned, he sent his resume out to cam loops to a company called Daizen. It's a Japanese guy who was a log builder, and then he started a timber framing company. And the next thing you know, Luke's working on, a big project and that's going to Hawaii, and this guy ships them all over the world. He's $1 million in debt, and he's $1 million up. He's that scale, whereas I'm not at that scale, thank God. Okay, so here we're into some frames now. So this is the project Luke and I and Alex Jack. Alex Jack helped me too, and one other guy, I forgot his name there. Who worked with you? The guy from Argentina.
Oh, sorry, Dimas?
So, yeah. Anyway, I forget. It was good. Anyway, we had a great time on this. So it was a large project. So this is about a 3,000 square foot timber frame on beside the rest of the house is 3,000 feet too. And the guy bought, he's bought 15 acres right on Georgian Bay. Yes.
How did you curve the curved ones?
This goes back, I used to have a bandsaw, but then when I went out west, I had to get rid of it because my guitar needed some work, and I didn't have enough room in my truck to take it, so I got rid of and then when I was out west, one of the things I was doing, all my tools would have to go in my truck because I was roaming around as an itinerant timber framer. So basically what I do is I just create the arc with a line, and then I'm good enough with my chainsaw to rough the line out. The line is just a suggestion. I don't try to cut to the line, I just cut close enough, and then I use a 7-inch grinder with a 40 grit, and then I use a couple of orbital sanders or a belt sander to help smooth it. And so all the braces are done that way, and all those arced collars are done that way. And then we make all these little teardrop pendants and stuff on the bottom, and I've done tons of those, but not recently. And this one here, I think I've got the drawings over there for that one. So the beautiful thing now is with these designers, the guys, I get my measurements to the 3rd decimal point, which is a 32nd of an inch, which is a swear word in construction. but a 16th heavy or 16th plus is not a swear word. So you try your best and you get close. But anyway, so that's good. And so these projects are very exciting because there's really no nails in that. That's all wooden joinery with oak pegs and holding it all together. And every once in a while I use these, let's see, I got them over here. All these structural screws and stuff, these heavy-duty structural screws they make now. So whenever I can use one of these in a hidden spot, because the idea is to have no showing steel, no visible steel, and so this is pretty much all wooden joinery with wooden pegs. But every once in a while you run into a situation where a structural steel is advantageous. Okay.
Are you gonna show them how you raise a building like that?
Yeah, I'm gonna come into that, some of that. Yeah, there'll be, let's see if there's, basically what I'm doing, I'll just mention that. So basically what I do, here I'll use my, is this whole end here, right down to there with this timber and all this and on and on and on. That's called a bent. It's a cross section. We call that a bent. And so this building had 11 bents in it. And then between the bents, you have a beam there, and then this one here, and then on and on and on. And so what we do is we assemble that on the ground, brace it up, and then we get, once we get them all done, then we get a crane in, and we get all pumped up, ready to go, and then we just sort of put up a bent, brace it to the floor, and so it stands on its own, and then we we install. Let's see if I can get a better picture. This goes back to when I was a log builder and this is I'm working on we had our own little log building yard in Combermere at Pathways Planing when they were just starting up. And anyway, and so this is a picture of Trailhead. It was 65 feet across, and what we did it the same way. Now this one here, we had to put steel beams. Here, just a second. Go back. We had to put like right now this doesn't have a steel beam because it's already raised, but we would put a steel beam across. I think we had a 65-foot steel beam or two, and we would lash them to the frame on the ground. So because there's bending possibility at every joint, so we want it nice and stiff. So we use steel beams, and we'd use truck straps or clamps or whatever to keep the whole thing stiff. And then we used 2 cranes at a time, and we lifted that up with 2 cranes. But the same idea, we would have, once you have one up, then you would attach. In this building, we had to attach everything. I don't think we could, we had to, no, we had to put everything up. So they put everything on scaffolding, supported it, and we had to use, in Trailhead, we had to use these metal plates for the engineer. This building was 65 feet by 120 feet long, and it was, these beams here are 32 feet. The reason we don't do it platform framing is we want to maintain, you basically want to go into the side of a building so that the whole building doesn't shrink on these big horizontal beams. And so these are 30, probably 32 or 36 foot beams, and then they held this steel right here to put the truss roof on top of that. I didn't do the truss roof, we just took it there. And then these are the side pieces there. So we would pull the beam up with the crane, hold it with the crane, and then we would establish truck straps or come-alongs and stuff and put a bunch of them on, and then we would just fit every joint in and nudge them together. And Greg Merrill, a lot of you might know Greg, in town here, he worked with me on that too. So I got to know Greg in the 80s, and when he was living up in between Wakefield and Chelsea, somewhere up in there, Farm Point, I think, and on the Gatineau River, and he was more of a log builder and I was more of a timber framer, and we started doing joint ventures, and then so he was on this. He had built Chris Harris a house, and so he had a crew up in Wakefield. Chris had a crew cutting all the braces, and then I did all these bents. I had a crew at my shop in Combermere, and we built all those, and then we got all together on the site, and Bob's your uncle, as they say. Okay.
John,
Yes.
so those vents are so huge, but you assembled them here and trucked them a long distance to the site?
Yeah.
How
Oh yeah. Sorry, I'm supposed to.
How big were the pieces that,
He's not finished the question yet. Sorry. Yeah.
how big were the pieces that you would put on a truck? You couldn't truck a whole vent by,
No, we would put them in pieces. So we would just ship everything individually. We wouldn't put it together like that whole bent. We would just, oftentimes what I do now is I'll test fit the whole frame in my yard. So, and then I ship like all these buildings here, they were all 100% test fitted at the sites, at the production site, so you have no surprises when you get to the site. You know, you haven't cut anything 10 inches short or anything like that. And so then you can carry a lot of beams. But with Trailhead, we just, wrong way. With Trailhead, we just did one bent, cut one bent and fit it at a time. Then we trucked it to the site. The other people had done the braces and all the connecting girts. And so then we did one bent. And then what happened is, once we got 2 or 3 started, then the people started making the floors, laying the second floor, or they started closing it in with the panels and putting the roof on. So they were sort of finishing the building, following us as we went. And so this is a crew I worked with in Owen Sound. For 5 years I worked with them. And we did 3 big projects. We did a lot of big projects, and I was kind of the main layout guy, meaning the guy with the plans, doing all the marking, and I was older than some of their, a lot of their fathers. Where's that picture? Yeah. So that's me there, and yeah, this is the owner and some of the guys, and all the rest of the guys are guys that I work with. And I had a great time with them. They're all local Owen Sound guys. And we did we did a few recycled barn buildings, houses up in a lot in the Collingwood area, all up on the hills behind Collingwood. And you go up the ski hill and then you go inland, you know, Rob Roy and all up in there. We were doing buildings, and this was on Lake Eugenia, or in that area, and yeah, just a big decorative art. This was down in Milton, another one. Yeah, good. This was in Craighurst, did that, and there's me with my banjo, and yeah, we had fun, and so and this was our drafts person here, Darren, and he now he's doing hospitals. He's got a crew of, he's got like a crew of 70 doing drawings now. But he never in 12 years he never gave me one wrong measurement. Everything was perfect. All his angles on all the compound joinery or anything like that. Yeah, he was great. It was I really enjoyed working with him, and the whole crew were good.
So are there any base basements, or is it all?
They're all on basements, basically, yeah.
Oh, so it's not just a concrete pad?
No, sometimes we do, I did a big 20,000 foot golf, and it might be in here, golf club house, you know, at the ridge of Manitou in McKellar, close to Perry Sound. And this one we did down in Pennsylvania. Real nice guy. His family developed the welding process for magnesium. Yeah, super, super rich. But it hadn't spoiled him. This is back on there. Another trailhead. There's the beam there that's holding everything together. And the guys, we had a big crew. We had about 18 guys work on that frame.
So
Yes.
Are you using the beam as a temporary support and then you take it away?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Once it's up and once everything's locked in, then we hook the crane onto it and then we unfasten it and take it away and use it on the next one. And yeah, so that was good. Okay, and then let's just see. Yeah, another trailhead one. Yeah, there we are. So yeah, so I'm on the far guy there looking up, and then the guy with the yellow hat worked with me in Combermere, and the other two guys were from Wakefield. One of them is Greg Merrill's brother, the guy in the red, Bob. So my business is very much personal, you know. It's not a big institution. So I work, you know, I still remember everybody's names and stuff. Yeah, it's kind of nice. And there's one, just a dovetail building Greg and I built, and on his property, and we shipped that down Buckshot Lake Road on 441. There's Greg there, working in his backyard, me and him. I did he helped with all the cutting, or all the moving of the timber and getting it ready, and then we'd work together on just drawing it out, and then I did all the cutting while he went somewhere else. And then here's one that this one I did for this is Nipika Lodge in just outside of Kootenay National Park, just on the Kootenay River, and just into BC, and because so there we are after the day was the raising day, and so this was the living room, and then we did a one floor, and he was the cross-country ski coach for the Canadian team in Lillehammer Olympics, Lyle Wilson, a real nice guy. Everybody, I'm going to say a lot of guys are real nice guys because I have had great clients my whole life. Yeah, just. And this is for Alan Dunn in Petawawa. He had some land, he's got 100 acres back of Petawawa. And I did the house first, and then he said, well, let's put a porch on it. And he said, I want two hexagons on either side, and then da-da-da-da-da. So we just sort of, it's good. Here's another one that I've done down by Ampa Plevna, down that way. Oh yeah, this was a great one. This one I did down in Harrogate, Spill Machine area of the Columbia Valley, between Golden and the Radium Hot Springs, or Invermere. I lived in it. I ended up moving out west when the interest rates went to 20% in the early 90s. Then there was no work here, but I had already developed clients out there, and I had a company, so I ended up going out there, and then one thing after another. So the idea of this was, anyway, this guy he cut all this own property. He was a hippie who left Haight-Ashbury in about 65, before it really got, and him and his wife, and they came up to Invermere, BC, and then they bought this 200 acres up the valley, and then he got a 5,000 hectare lease to manage the forest. So all I would do is he'd say, well, what do you need next? And I'd say, well, we're going to need an 8 by 12, 20 feet, or or I said, like these beams here, I said, well, they're going to be, yeah. He said, well, what do you need? I said, well, they got to be this size and da 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 da. So he went out, and those two big beams are from the same tree. So he cut something, it was about that wide, and then we split it in half, and so they match. Anyway, real nice guys. I think they're all passed away though. That's what happens. There we are there. After that was a great project. Real nice people, and I played a lot of music with him too. I can always say who I play music with. I played. Now, yeah. See here's a basement here, and so generally speaking, the timber frames, I only timber frame the main structure, not anything in the basement, and we very seldom make a first floor out of beams. It's sort of lost, but and so this was on MacDonald Lake Road. I did 2 buildings on that road, and this is for Gary Mitchell. Some of you guys know, but poor old Gary passed away too. So there it is there. But I liked working in Swisha, and this is when I did on Mayor's Bay Road. I think, yeah. It doesn't have the steps in it yet, but this is what I did in Embrim. It was an outdoor backyard. The people were busy. They didn't want to have a cottage, so they just put in a pool and then a barbecue area and a shaded area and a hot tub area. And this was their backyard. Yeah, and this is another one in Petawawa. And here's our little one on the spit there by the lighthouse, and for the Christine Harding. And that was one. That was a good one, because I got to work with all the town guys and everything. Got to know them, and Glenn, Don Caster. Oh yeah, here's my big golf course clubhouse, and that's totally timber framed right up to the gazebo there at the top, or the cupola, and yeah, and one of my main memories there is the guys doing the stonework played music so loud that it was just like nothing I'd ever heard before. Whew, it was loud. But this was good, and it won the Rookie of the Year for the best golf course clubhouse of that year. Yes, another question?
I'm trying to understand the outside paneling, cladding, because then the one arch is exposed, but I guess the vertical wall
Yeah.
is
Oh,
inside
it's-
from that, but you've got one arch exposed.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's the entryway. So sometimes, like right now, when I do a porch around or anything like that,
Right.
I do that as a separate building. I put on after all the insulation goes on.
Okay.
And here I did at least 70% of the layout on that building, and I helped do some of the raising. I didn't really do much cutting or any, because we had a big crew to do that. But and you don't tackle one of these without a gang of guys. Yes.
So I'm just kind of wondering where the design comes from. Does the design come from a client or from an architect, or does it come from you?
A mixture, like,
How will the drawing come together?
for this, I had nothing to do with the design. The design came with the architect and so he's asking, I'm supposed to tell what the questions are, but he's asking about the design process. And so basically, that drafts person that I showed you earlier that I really liked, who never gave me a wrong measurement, this is one of the buildings that we would do buildings like this, big, and but the design generally comes from a conglomeration of people. Someone starts it, and they come up with the concept, and then it would often go to Darren, our architectural draftsman, and he would do a proposal frame, floor plan and frame drawing, and then that would get refined again, and then and then he would do once it got closer, you'd send it to a engineer, and then so it's a pretty detailed project. You don't do it overnight or anything like that, so these get worked on for a year or two in the planning stage, and then by the time, but usually by the time I'm involved, it's all designed and engineered and everything like that. And away we go. There's that other building. Okay, so the other thing, so because I've worked with so many structural insulated panels, right from when they first came out, I worked with a number of architects, and one architect out of Arnprior, Jeff Armstrong, he got me involved in this project. So what we did was we built 142 structural insulated houses through 19 communities in Nunavut. So I was up there for 6 months, and this is working in Pond Inlet. We did 10 buildings, and what I was is I was kind of the trainer for the village. I did 5 villages. And so I would show up there and then we'd have a crew of, from NCC, Nunavut Construction Corporation. And in Nunavut, all the businesses have to be part Inuit owned. So this one guy, he had gone to school up there and met a lady, and they got married and and then they started this business. So he would bring up 15 or 10 Newfoundlanders, and then we would hire about 10 or 15 Inuit people. And so once I would show them the process for the floor, then they'd send a few guys off to build a couple more floors and the other foundations. And then when we did the walls, then they'd leave and spin off and go, and the roof the same. And so that's how we built them all in basically a year. And we had maybe 5 or 6 crews like that going at the same time all over the place. So I got to see quite a bit of none of it, and I really got to, if I was a young man again, I would love to spend some more time up there, but anyway, that was it. And there's a little, the picnic shelter down on the waterfront. And there's this, this is the little, at the playground structure. And there's the roof of the playground. So that you get into an octagon building or hexagon, and the level of complexity in the roof is. But I was able to build that whole roof in my shop in the winter time, and then able to put it up there. And then this is the. So I got involved with the Timber Framers Guild about '86. I heard about it in '85, but it just started in 85, so I got involved in 86, and I went to about 9 or 10 conferences, and because I was a Canadian and they were all Americans, they wanted to have some Canadians, so they paid $5 for me to go down there 5 times and be involved in the panels and different things like that. So that was fun. I got to meet all the business owners and a lot of the guys, and so it's still going. So and it was 34 years since we put up the bridge. So my friend Mark Cernosky, who works with me right here, him and I went this last June down to just outside of Cambridge, and we met all the younger, it was the first time I'd been for 32 years to a Timber Framers Guild rendezvous, they call them. And so it was nice to meet all the new people, and I was definitely the vintage and the longest timber framer there. So yeah, it was great. So I might try to keep involved with that. And there's Mark there again, talking with him, a couple other guys. And so then they just get together and they talk timber framing and share experiences, and it's a way of teaching and bringing people in and developing camaraderie. And they have a bunch of these every year all over the place, and this happened to be local. And I wouldn't mind doing one here somewhere. There we are, getting ready to put up the Christine Harding thing. We're just all smiles.
It looks like you always work in beautiful weather.
Yeah, I do. We bring the beautiful weather. We just, well, that's the beautiful thing about a shop. I never miss a day. All winter long, because when I was log building, it was all outside, or house building, you try to get a foundation in the spring, and it's muddy and rainy and icy, and and you get delayed by 3 weeks, and you've been off all winter. Where having your own shop, I don't care when they get it. I can just, it's sort of liberating. Plus, it's warm, which is good for all your joints. I mean, I've talked to lots of carpenters who they worked outside in the cold weather a lot, especially guys who are older than me. I've worked with a lot of guys 15 years older than me. I'm more comfortable with older people because I've worked with so many older guys than me. I was always the youngest, but not anymore. But anyway, and they worked, that was when there was not really good safety, and they didn't have good gloves and their hands got damaged. So I'm big into safety and process and anyway, that's where are we at now? Yes, question.
John, when I was working in Ottawa, the time the trailhead building went up.
Oh, you were, yeah.
So, we used to go down there every once in a while just to see how the progress was going on.
Oh, yeah, great.
So, what happened to it?
Well, what happened to it was the land prices went up so high that the land was more valuable than the building, and so it was sold, and they took the building down, and then but Chris is. I've been talking to Chris for the last 3 or 4 years, and they're getting ready. They've got the approvals and the plans. I just talked to them maybe a month ago. We had a meeting down in the big stop in Pembroke, and we're going to do another one. We're working on so we were reviewing the plans. We had a little meeting, and we're going to build a 50 by 100, same sort of building, but not a sports building. He's just going to rent it out, but it's going to be in downtown Wakefield. So he's got a crew up there, and I might be involved, it all depends on how quick he gets it going, because I'm sort of tied up for a year or more.
What happened to the old building? Was it framing ever used?
Well, he did get some of it, and And other than that, I don't know, because they built an office tower there,
Yeah.
and that's the way she goes.
It's a lovely place, I used to go shopping.
Yeah, yeah. Yes.
As I understand it, shipping pallets have to be heat cured because of parasites. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah,
sir?
he's still asking it.
Yeah, I was asking about, a standard pallet has to be heat treated because it, for shipping, it solves the parasite problem.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm wondering if you run into that kind of restraint when you ship all over.
Well, basically, most of the time I'm shipping. He's asked about shipping timbers far away, and you know, and how they are protected in the. Is that basically your question? You know, what kind of regulations, and if they stain or mold or that kind of thing in the container, and most of the time I use the flatbed, so they're out in the open and they're shipped only for you know, like when I was shipping to Alberta, it would take them 3 days or so to get there, and that would be fine. Then they get on. I would fly out, then I'd meet them when they got there, and then. But I did do 20 buildings. I worked with a guy. I built a house for a guy who was an ocean ecologist, and he was one of the guys in the early 50s. He found all the wrecks up in Tobermory. He was a professor at McMaster, and he worked a lot in Banda Aceh, which is in Sumatra, and that's where the big tsunami happened. And so he he put a team of professors and stuff together, and then eventually the Thompson family funded this, and we built 20 little buildings, put them in a container, and shipped them to Indonesia. And I had all my shots and everything. I was going to go over there, and but they landed in Jakarta. And when they were in Jakarta in these containers, they buried the container in the yard, big yard, and hid it because they had been having a civil war, and the people in Jakarta didn't like the people in Banda Aceh. So they were in the tropics. Now we did use hemlock for that, donated by Murray Brothers in Madawaska, and but by the time that guy died, the guy who was ahead of the container port died or moved on, then the timbers, the project had dissipated, and I don't really know what happened, but I got paid. So, but the sad part of it is the Thompsons wanted to do more of those projects, but because I think my buddy thought he was, because he had worked there for 10 years, he thought he had some, I thought he thought he was sort of special or something. I'm not sure. We should have hooked up with like the Red Cross or some organization like that. And then because I was kind of thinking, well, geez, we could set up something around here, and that would give jobs to younger guys and all that. But it sort of didn't happen. But they were willing to continue. And I didn't talk to them. It was all through my friend Mike Risk. And so what's the time? I just can't see the time there. We're supposed to have a break here. It's right behind you, the clock. Oh yeah, 8:30. 8:30. So that's a good time for a break?
Are there any more questions?
Any more questions?
All right, we'll take a 10-minute break.
Oh yeah, here's one.
Walter?
So you're putting up all those buildings, and they're heavy and
Yeah.
complicated. Did you ever have any mishap?
I've never had anything. I did have one log fall and go through the main floor because it flipped and went down. This was a log building on that first log building I showed. Went right in the basement, right between the joists, and make a hole in the plywood. And I've had every problem you can have. You can, it's sort of a matter of knowing how to solve the problems. That's the real art, and not. I've had sometimes where I've left the post long. I haven't really left the post. One time I left the post short, but it wasn't that much short, and I was able to make a little foot out of a piece of 8 by 12 or something, and it looked good. And then the other time it was long, and the crane just held it up, and I was able to see what the problem was, so I just cut it off a couple times. And I have made the 10-inch mistakes. Sometimes I don't like to use the end of the tape measure, so I would work from a 10, and sometimes I'd get all the complicated stuff right, but I'd cut some joists 10 inches short. So I did a project in Prince Edward Island, and I had to go to New Brunswick to get timber. So I'd get about 8 joists or something like that. And I had that happen to me once in Canmore too. But anyway, now I don't seem to have those problems. Because I test fit the whole thing now, and at the beginning, people weren't they were taking stuff to the site and just test fitting once. But now I would never do that anymore, and I wouldn't recommend it. It's way better. Because the thing is, I like to sleep a full night, and if you have stress, if you test fit, then when you go to the site, you can just have a good sleep because you know it's going to work. So it's more of a celebration now than a stress, so that's good. Any more questions for the moment? No, we're good.
10-minute break, and then John he's got his guitar here.
Mike's asked me to play a couple tunes, so I'll play a couple of old-time tunes. And away we go. Thank you very much.